Hello and welcome to the Lund University International Podcast. On the show, you'll hear from current students, alumni, teachers, and many more special guests as we explore what it's really like to live and study at Lund University. My name is Tim Parker, and I am an International Communications Officer here at External Relations. Today we are talking about a topic which everyone is talking about right now, which is artificial intelligence. More specifically, can artificial intelligence think? And we have a very special guest in the studio. Welcome.
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself to our listeners.
Well, my name is Peter Gärdenfors. I'm a professor of cognitive science at Lund University. And officially, I've passed the retirement date, but I refuse to retire. So I continue writing both scientific articles and popular articles and popular books.
Fantastic. Well,
yeah.
we're glad you didn't retire so you can come on the pod. And you have recently published a timely book. Please tell us about it.
Well, it's a book in Swedish. The translation into English would be Can AI Think? But there is also a subtitle that is quite important, that's about humans, animals, and robots. So I'm comparing the thinking, the cognition of humans, animals, and AI and robots.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could you please give us an overview of your book?
Well, I begin by this description of the human cognition, all these factors that are included. But then I compare the human cognition to animal cognition. I mean, what are humans good at and what are the animals good at? And main differences I find there are these differences with causal reasoning and how we think about the minds of other individuals. So these are maybe the two main differences. But then after doing the animal part, I do compare with humans with computers and AI systems. And one particular theme is that I claim that the brain is not a computer. I mean, in AI, very often it's claimed that we can count the neurons, and now ChatGPT has more neurons. I mean, the neural network that it builds on has more neurons than the human brain, so it must be smarter. This comparison with the brain as a computer, I think, is an old-fashioned idea that actually came with Alan Turing. He had this idea, and people are still clinging to the idea that we just have to count the number of elements in the artificial systems. But it's the general mechanism of the brain that is more important, and that's still very different from what we see in the artificial systems.
Fantastic. How long did it take to write this one?
I've written articles about the topics for some years, and I've been working on AI for many, many years. But the book in itself took me, well, basically a year to write. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Impressive. And I'm wondering if you could delve a little bit more into the book. You mentioned the difference between human and AI cognition and animals. Please let us know.
Well, recently there has been a lot of hype about AI. I mean, the ChatGPT and other large language models and also picture programs have been really great breakthroughs, and they've given us new tools for doing lots of things that we couldn't do before. And they are generative. They're called generative artificial intelligence because they can really generate new products, new solutions to problems. So some people have claimed that this is really these are really systems that go beyond the human thinking and so on. And what I want to do in the book is to say that these are good tools. They can do some things very, very well, much better than humans can do. But there are so many things that humans and animals do that these systems can't do. So I'm not afraid that AI will take over the world or anything like that.
Oh, that's very nice to hear. Given ChatGPT and everything that's happened recently, I think we're all relieved to hear that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, an analogy, which I unfortunately didn't include in the book, is to ask the question, can airplanes fly? Of course, airplanes can fly. I mean, they fly much faster and much longer than birds and bats and other animals do, but they fly in a different way. And animals can do so much more by flying than the airplanes can do. They can find food, they can find shelter, they can find partners, they can survive by flying. While airplanes can't survive without humans, they can't find their own food, whatever food is for an airplane, and so so on. So the analogy is that an AI system is similar. It can do certain things much quicker, much more efficiently than humans do. But there are so many other things. An AI system can't survive on its own. ChatGPT and other large language models are trained on huge amounts of data, basically everything that is on the internet. And when it gives an answer, it selects the most probable answer. I mean, you pick a word and you estimate the most probable next word and so on. And that means that you take a kind of statistical average of what you find on the net. And since the world is biased, the ChatGPT will also be biased for race and gender and other things. And since that was discovered, people who are working with these large language models, they have to add material that blocks these the worst forms of biases. But that means that humans have to sit and laboriously add new things to the system, and you have to pay humans to get rid of the worst biases.
Exactly. I really like the analogy between talking about if an airplane can fly or not. Yeah. And yes, I'm also really interested in the cause and effect reasoning, which seems like something you begin to discuss now.
Yeah. In the book, I present a list, a very long list of human capacities, human cognitive capacities. So we can perceive, we can see and hear and smell and feel and so on. We have a memory, we have an attention mechanism, we can learn things, we can pick up concepts, we have a memory and we solve problems, we make decisions, we have a consciousness, we even have a self-consciousness, we have language. And some of these capacities we find also in AI systems, but there are many that we don't find. And one of them is this reasoning about causes and effects. If ChatGPT finds something about reasoning on causes effect in the internet, it can copy it in a text. I mean, can copy it. But if you give ChatGPT as an ordinary problem about the real world, what happens if you drop a glass and so on, sometimes it can answer because there are answers in the net. But very often it can't solve any practical problems. So I give a couple of examples of that in the book, that it's bad on reasoning about causes and effects. Because these AI systems, they live on screens, they live on computers. They don't act in the world. I make a distinction between AI and robotics. A robot is something that acts in the world, but robots are normally not connected to any really smart system. I mean, you can put ChatGPT in a robot, and there are some that has these systems, but they can't use it to act in the world. So acting in the world is a much more difficult problem than generating text and pictures that these modern systems do.
Fantastic. Mm-hmm. So it also sounds like we shouldn't be too worried about ChatGPT being able to pass the Turing test.
Yeah, well, it can pass many tests. I mean, I claim that IQ is not a good measure of intelligence, because given what's available on the net, ChatGPT would have almost full score in an IQ test, because all answers there. I mean, all these questions about math and language and pattern completion are available. So that's not a good point. So in the book, I propose another test, and that is being able to solve new problems in new situations. I mean, kind of creative problem solving. And ChatGPT can do some of these things, but it can do very advanced theoretical solutions. But given the small, everyday practical problems we have as human beings, they would be very bad at doing things like that. So somebody has said that AI can solve all the difficult problems that we have as humans, but it can't solve the simple everyday problems we have, finding food and solving all kinds of problems. Yeah.
Fantastic to hear. And that also brings me to another question about comparing the so-called cognitive abilities of, for example, a 2-year-old child with an AI system.
Yeah, a 2-year-old child has understood much of how the world functions because they have learned to. They try to walk and they fall and they hurt themselves. They drop food from the table and things fall over. And you interact with people and you see that if you behave in this way, then there will be a certain reaction. They have learned about how the causes and effects in the world function to a much larger extent than any AI system I've seen can do. So they get used to the world by just being in it. And an AI system is not in the world, so they have lots of problems with these everyday things.
And in your book, you mention examples where animals, for example, crows, dogs, and rats, outperform artificial intelligence. What can we learn from these comparisons?
I give examples of tool making, for instance, and so on. But again, it's a matter of that we as biological beings, I mean, both humans and other animals, our main problems, I mean, our brains and our bodies are made for surviving and reproducing. I mean, that's the main task of a biological system. But the AI systems are not made for this, so they have different aims. And we have made the AI systems to solve certain problems, but that means that their thinking, I mean, the animal and human thinking, is different from these thinking of AI systems.
And could you tell us a little bit more about the difference between AGI, artificial general intelligence, and AI?
The AI is not a unitary thing. There are lots of AI systems, and our cell phones are full of AI nowadays. I mean, there are all kinds of applications, and they are made for special purposes. And even large language models are made for special purposes, like producing text or producing programming code or producing pictures. But human intelligence in general, we combine all these factors that I mentioned and in order to solve problems. And artificial general intelligence would be a system that has all these cognitive abilities. And we don't see any systems like that yet. I doubt that we can construct an AGI system. Nobody has said anything about how this can be done. I mean, people like Nick Bostrom talk about super intelligence systems will have this general intelligence and so on, but he never says anything about how to construct such a system. And I don't think it's possible at the current stage of science, at least. I don't know about the future, that we will have to see. But the main problem for me is then that the systems don't act in the world.
All right, so it sounds like your main sort of critique about the strengths and limitations of AI is that they don't act in the world, as you say.
That's a big limitation, yeah. Yes. And if you look at the robots, they act in the world, but so far, in my opinion, robots are rather stupid. I mean, there are some recent cases. There is a new robot called Ameka. It's a humanoid robot. It has a really flexible face. It can talk. It can talk via a large language model. And it can move its face. It can look at the person it's talking to. It moves its hands, but it can't do anything with the hands. So it's basically a talking or an embodied large language model. It doesn't do very much more.
And I'm curious on your thoughts about if AI can interpret human social signals, intentions, and emotions, and if it's possible for AI to sort of detect irony and humor.
Yeah. That's another area where I find problems in the artificial systems. In cognitive science and psychology, we call this intersubjectivity. Sometimes it's called theory of mind. It's the ability to understand the emotions of others, the attentions of others, the desires of others, the beliefs of others. And as a child, you learn that. I mean, when you're little, you don't understand that some other people don't know the same things as you do. And you learn that when you're somewhere between 3 and 4 years of age. And we find some, I mean, if you ask ChatGPT, it has some forms of intersubjectivity, but it turns out that it's based on what's available on the material it's been trained on. And if you put it in a new situation, it has no idea how to solve that situation. So intersubjectivity of the artificial systems is, in my opinion, quite limited. And then we come to the big question, and that is whether the systems have any form of consciousness.
Okay, here we go.
And there are some reports on whether it's possible to put consciousness into the systems. I'm not very convinced by these reports. Some people claim that ChatGPT is conscious because it answers like a human. Many people are conversing with ChatGPT because they find it rewarding, and I've even heard stories about people falling in love with their chatbot. I think that humans are fooling themselves. We are attributing too much to these systems in terms of how much they understand. So we are giving them. We do the same thing with animals. We attribute our dogs or cats much more intelligence than they really have, and we have. It's a kind of anthropomorphism that it is difficult for us to avoid.
Fantastic. And now I have a question for you about what you just mentioned about consciousness. For those listening that are not such experts in this area, what is consciousness?
That's the eternal question that has no clear answer. Lots of people are studying this, and we are even studying consciousness in animals. But I want to make a distinction between two types of consciousness. One is being aware, seeing, feeling, hearing, and so on. And this type of awareness we find in many animals. There is no doubt about that. Then the second type is self-consciousness. That is the ability to reflect upon your own experiences, on your own abilities, on your own emotions, and so on. And we find very limited evidence that animals have this form of self-consciousness. And if you ask me about whether ChatGPT or robots have consciousness, I would say no. I mean, there is no clear evidence for this. Some people claim that ChatGPT is conscious, and if you ask it, it says it has some form of consciousness. But I don't think there is any form of awareness in these systems, let alone in robots.
All right.
Yeah.
And I think our listeners will feel a little bit comforted by all the things you've said so far, because they kind of bring down our fears about the risks that AI bring. But still, there must be some risks with the recent developments in AI. What are those ones that you talk about in the book?
First of all, I would like to say that I'm not afraid that AI will take over the world on its own. It will not take over because AI is too intelligent, more intelligent than humans are. Maybe AI will have a great influence because humans are too stupid. That is, we accept too much. We let the systems decide for us. I mean, not only the modern AI system, but we have lots of recommending programs and apps. I mean, we let the systems choose for us, and I think that's a big source of fear for me. That I fear that we become immature in relation to the AI systems because we let them decide too much. But of course, there are other problems with AI systems, and in particular, I'm afraid of the applications within the military area. I mean, we already have very intelligent drones, and the question is, to what extent can we let a drone decide on what it wants, it does and does not do, and so on. So AI has a lot of implications that may be dangerous, but we still have control over how we design the AI system, and it's up to us to decide how much control we will give to the AI systems. I'm afraid that the military may give too much freedom to some of these systems.
All right. And a question that a lot of people have been discussing recently as well is if we should be worried about losing our jobs to AI.
Not losing the jobs, but the AI will definitely change the job market. I mean, I have an analogy here again. I mean, in the early 20th century, when electricity was coming into the world, our everyday lives was electrified with lights and so on. And all the gaslight workers in the cities, they lost their jobs because you didn't need to light up the gas lamps anymore. So they lost their jobs. But on the other hand, there are now many more electricians than there ever were gaslight persons. And I think the same thing will happen with AI. Some people, like journalists or people working with graphics, will not lose their jobs, but maybe their jobs will be transformed. And we don't know what new jobs AI will create. I mean, there might be lots of new electricians in AI that we can't foresee at the moment.
Exactly. I'm thinking, for example, a customer service job, for example, the type of work that a customer service representative might have done might no longer be necessary, but that just provides the opportunity for work in another area.
We already have a lot of artificial customer service, and that will, of course, increase. Yeah.
All right, Peter. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on to the show today and presenting the book.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Lund University International Podcast. If you're interested in learning more about Lund University, you can go to our website, lunduniversity.lu.se. You can also follow us on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, and X, and you can chat with current students on UniBuddy. Don't forget to subscribe, and we look forward to bringing you a new episode very soon.